Hi, welcome at your service in Caras. It's just turned 11 a.m., Tuesday, the 17th of February, 2026, and this is the 11 a.m. meeting. I'm again the only person here, so I'm going to talk about something random again. In fact, I'm going to continue a little on what I was talking about yesterday in the area of distractions. I have still been distracted and I feel apart from God. I know God is all around us all the time, God's in me, etc. But my connection, my spiritual connection, is weaker. That's not to make it a sin or anything like that. The distraction itself was ungodly because it was a chosen distraction for me to take a couple of days to entertain myself. And those couple of days thinking less of God, etc., it's so much more difficult to get back into the relationship, the position that I was in. In fact, I feel like I have lost maybe 20% of my connection with God, and I've regained maybe 5% of that. So I'm still lacking 15% of the connection I had with God. They're just wild figures. It's just a feeling of um, less there than there was. How much of less, I really can't say. I just threw out some wild figures. But anyway, I realize how difficult it is to get into a regular, almost constant communication with God, to have the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, the fruits of the Spirit in your life, especially the joy of God. If you're constantly in God, that is just constantly growing. But the moment you take that break, the let's say it was growing at 2% a day, that the growth that was happening will reduce 5 times quicker. I will lose 10% a day, if you can follow what I'm saying there. So just a couple of days off, and I have lost so much connection. It isn't funny. For the average person, you're going to find it somewhat difficult to even comprehend this because to you, God is just almost distant. Your relationship with God isn't a direct connection. Sure, you might have committed your life to God. Sure, you might have God in your life somewhat, but you are not taking leaps and bounds in God. You're not constantly having God on your mind. You're not constantly acting on behalf of God. You're not constantly telling people about God or the like, whether that's fivefold ministry or a support ministry that you have. Maybe you haven't even found your calling. Whatever situation you're at, chances are it's mostly a mental assent. It's mostly you know God's there, you pray to God, but you don't really have the feeling of God in your heart that is talking to you, not with an audible voice nor even a voice in your head, but through a feeling of communication. Like you might think or say something, and it's like, oh, that's wrong. That's no, no, look, that's not what God would have. I think God would have this instead. Or you might be urged to do something for God, and that will be an urge that you feel support from in your heart. It's incredibly difficult to even comprehend these things if you haven't experienced these things. And most people don't get to the point where they do experience these things. In fact, Christianity, for the great majority of people, is merely a mental assent. Firstly, I'm going to come up with some figures that are not real figures because I don't know the figures, but I'm just going to give you an idea of what I see anyway. Of people on this planet, let's say 30% call themselves Christians. Might not even be that. In fact, it'd probably be less. It'd probably be, let's say 25% call themselves Christians. One in four. And out of those 25% of the people on the planet that call themselves Christians, let's say 1% of them are active. And when I say active, I mean they're doing at least something for God, whether it be a role like a ministerial role, fivefold role, pastors, prophets, evangelists, teachers, apostles, or whether it be a support or a helps role, like ushering or uh, church administration or counselling or uh, street uh, care teams or evangelism teams or hospital ministry or whatever it might be. And let's say that's 1%. No, in all reality, it's probably a little bit more than 1%. Um, if you've got a church of 300 people, there's more than three people that are ushers and pastors, etc. In fact, you could say it's about 3%, I guess. There'll be maybe nine people in some kind of ministry in that regard if there's 300 people. However, out of those nine people, I tend to find that some of those might have just a mental assent to God. They might have a prayer life, but it's a one-way prayer life. They're just saying their regular prayers and they're not really connecting with God because they are full of the self. They are people that are not putting God first in their life. They're people that are still number one in their life. They are selfish or they are prideful or they have ego or they can't let go of their identity or they need friends or relationships or whatever, it's like they have needs that are greater needs than the need for God. And if you have anything that is greater than God, whether it be your ego, yourself, your pride, your need for friends or anything, then you're not really in the right position with God. You need to find out more about what God wants from your life and how to step up to that. Because when you're saved, you get to a mindset that if you're heading in the right direction, you get to a mindset that God is the constant in your life and everything else is just temporary. You are thinking on God more often than you're not. How many people really think on God more often than not? The majority of the time. Most people are giving God a minority of their time, not a majority. So I too have stepped back and comprehended what it's like. You can get to a point where it's hard to understand someone in the world, and I'm not saying necessarily a non-Christian, I'm not saying necessarily a worldly person, but a person that has the world on their mind rather than God on their mind as a constant or a majority of the time. And it's not nice. Well, it might be okay, sure, playing games or the like might be fun. Watching TV might be entertaining, but you're missing out on the wonderful things of God. You're not growing in those fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, because you're not spending the time with God to do that. Now, to spend time with God, there's multiple options. One, you could do so while you're doing other things. I mentioned yesterday, if I was hanging out the washing, I'd think on godly things at that time. And if I was driving a car, I would think on God while driving a car, rather than think on what it is you need to do when you get to work or when you're hanging out the washing, rather than thinking about what the neighbour said yesterday. But this takes time and it takes practice. The more you do something, the more it becomes natural and it grows. The less you do something, the more distractions you have. There's something I used to say: broken routines tend to be swamped by new routines or frivolity. It's difficult to get back to the routine because other things will just pop up. It's a matter of, oh, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that, and a couple of days go by, and then it's like you might have a thought, well, I should get back to this, but I've still got to do this and this, and then another few days go by, and you don't even think about getting back to this anymore. And then weeks or months go by, and it's like, oh, I used to do this every day, and you haven't done it for months. It's just those broken routines are either replaced with other things or with nothing at all. Frivolity, just, oh, I'll watch TV or the like. So, how do you change if you consider God worth the change? And I think God is worth the change, especially as if God is not first in your life, then you've not committed to God. You might have said a sinner's prayer once or twice, but you still haven't given God your life. You're still in control. You're still boss. You're still getting hurt if somebody says something bad about you. If someone says something bad about me, I could care less, because the only thing that matters in my life is God. Me, I don't matter. I'm irrelevant. You're getting angry at someone who doesn't matter. Me, I don't matter. Not that I don't matter in God. Not that I am a worthless person, but I am merely submitted to God, and in being submitted to God, God comes first. God takes up all of my heart, and I don't have room for pride, for ego, for anything of me. So how can you hurt something that's not there anymore? When we get hurt, chances are it's because we still consider ourselves important. We still consider ourselves valuable. Oh, I'm a good person, me. Well, then you're trying to get to heaven or wherever, whatever, in your own strength. It's you're trying to be a good person to whatever. But forget all that. What we need is God instead of us. So I don't try and be good. I don't try to do things for God. I don't anything. Just me, forget that. Let's get rid of me from out of my life. And God, you take my entire life and then you do whatever you want with it. And if you actually do that in reality, God will automatically move you from your old sinful nature towards godliness. You won't actually have to do anything. You'll just wake up one day and think, well, I used to be an alcoholic. I used to swear. I used to um, lie, cheat, and steal. I don't do any of those things anymore. All I do all day is just praise God or tell people about God or write godly messages or do godly things. Even if I'm working, if I'm at work, I'm still thinking on God. That is what a Christian is. Someone who has committed to getting the me out of their life and replacing that with God. And if you make the decision to get the me out of your life and let God take over, then that will happen. Your ego, your pride, your desires, your needs will all become irrelevant. The only thing that will matter will be God. So anything that might have caused sin previously is forgotten and you're heading towards godliness. It's a natural response. So I'd been distracted. I'd chosen to be distracted. It's the first time I'd chosen to play a game in 2 years. I have basically done absolutely nothing in that regard. And in the last 10 months, have just been focusing on God. And that's the changes that had happened in my life. What about you? Who's ruling your life? You or God? Do you get upset when people do things that hurt you? Well, that's your ego, your pride, your whatever. It's still you being first instead of God. Do you constantly think on God, even when you have any opportunity to think on other things other than what you must be doing at that time? If you don't have to concentrate 100% on the task that you're doing, and there's a couple of little percentage of whatever you can actually think on other than that task or whatever it is, then is that couple of percent thinking of what are you going to do on the weekend? Or is that couple of percent thinking on a verse of scripture, a new song that you're writing for God in your head or whatever? Uh, a better way to tell people about God, whatever. Is it godly things? And I think that the great majority of you, no, it's not. Out of the 25% of people, let's say, well, I figure, that call themselves Christians, I'm going to say 95% of them are likely to be mistaken. Certainly more than 50%. Definitely more than 50%. I can go into a church, and if I was to ask all the people if I could spend the average day with them, if they're at work or whatever it might be, and ask every now and again, well, what are you thinking on? Or the like. What would you do about this? Or the like. I would find that God is not ruling the lives of more than half of them. I'm going to say 9 out of 10 people that call themselves Christians probably aren't. I know that God doesn't like religious practice. Now, what I'm saying by religious practice is we do exactly this, and then we do exactly this, and then we do exactly this to worship God. We come into church, we watch the minister in his beautiful robes walk down the aisle and enter the pulpit, and he preaches on some boring thing because he doesn't know God himself, because he thinks God is all about the robes and the glory that he gets as a minister, and you're not putting God first. You might be in a church in ministry and you're still not putting God first. Because from what I've learnt from God, I couldn't put on robes to preach because I can't take the attention away from God and look at me in my beautiful robes. I am so wonderful. I'm more important than God. Well, sure, we're here in a church, but look at me. I've got white and gold all over me. I really believe a lot of the older churches have lost connection with God. And you know something? I'm probably going to lose a few people from this group just by saying this, because there are people in this group that respect the robes more than they respect God. If the robes are your duty because you happen to be in that kind of church and you're a minister in that kind of church and you do have a good relationship with God, but your duty to that church is to wear those robes, okay, maybe. Maybe you're heading in a good direction, but your duty to God is to say to that church that, hey, we shouldn't be wearing robes. We shouldn't be trying to focus the people's attention on us. I hope you're understanding what I'm talking about here. So, when you move towards God, God will also move towards you. Many years ago, I used to use the example of a stalactite and a stalagmite. A stalactite hanging down from a cave is a piece of rock that has formed over millions of years, or whatever, that drips of water containing rock would drip down, and some of the rock would be left on the surface. So therefore it'd grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the bottom, that's a stalactite. At the bottom, we've got a stalagmite, which is where all that mineral is landing, water with minerals in it. And that water with the minerals in it, when it's landing on that stalactite, is depositing some minerals on it. So they're getting, over whatever time it is, they're getting closer and closer, and they're growing bigger and bigger and getting closer and closer all the time. Our relationship with God is the same. The more we drip our mindset, our obedience, our life towards God, the more God will also reach up towards us. Of course, in our circumstance, it's the other way around. We're reaching up to God and God is reaching down to us. But gravity works the opposite. So, but still the same example. There's a closeness that's uh, coming together as we draw closer to God, God draws closer to us. Anyway, I'm repeating myself now. So I think I'll start wrapping up because it's been long enough. Look at your life. Which one are you? Do you really think of God the majority of your time? Do you really earnestly want to do godly things the majority of your time? Would a stranger that's met you after an hour with you say, you're the kind of person that's really got God in your life? I can see you're pushing on towards godliness and you're spreading God everywhere? Or would they say, well, you're a football fan that has a particular job and you love your job and you have you love your family and you consider yourself a good person. Which one are you? What would somebody say about you after having met you for 1 hour? Do they know that God's in your life? Really? Okay. As I said, I'm going to wrap up. So that's all I've got for today. Again, another random unintended message. Now, please rate these messages. Out of 10, was it a poor message? A 4 out of 10? Was it a sort of good message? A 6 out of 10? Was it a very good message? An 8 out of 10? What do you think? If it was better than a 5 out of 10, if it was, you know, 6 or more, consider posting it to other people, posting it on your page, so all your followers can see it. If you think it was a very good message, an 8, 9, 10 out of 10, definitely do that. Please, put a comment on it. Say, if it was, this is a pretty good message, or, this is an average message, or I didn't really like this message. Whatever, put a comment on it. If you think it's great, put, you should watch this, or something like that on the bottom of it, and then post it to everyone. Anyway, contact us. Tell us what you think of these messages. Contact me and tell us that you want to get more involved with God, and we can help you directly learn things more and act more for God. We can help you find your calling and train in that calling and launch that calling if you don't know what your calling is. If you're in your calling, great. Help us to teach people and so on. So, bless you, govern well, encourage.